All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Beast Wars Basic Class Bantor. Bantor here was released in 1998 and is one of the Fuzors of the Beast Wars toy line, which, if you're unfamiliar, basically are just a group of Maximals and Predacons who had two different animals kind of fused into one as their alt mode. So in the case of Bantor here, he is the combination of a Mandrill and a tiger, which makes for a really neat little creature here. I like how it's got like the sort of Mandrill fur here that kind of fades into the tiger stripes, and then has these like big chunky big cat legs for the front legs, and then these little tiny Mandrill legs in the back here. I just think it's a really neat alt mode and definitely a cool combination of animals. But yeah, in terms of articulation in this mode, the back legs here are just on a ball joint here, so they can just rotate at the hip, and that's about it. What's kind of neat about the back legs here is they're actually sculpted in different poses, so they're not just mirrored. You can see the one in the back here has a flat foot, and this one is kind of like, up on its toes, which is a little weird, but it adds a neat bit of like, dynamicism to the beast mode, I guess. Makes it kind of a cool little pose there. In terms of front legs, they're just going to end up being the robot mode legs. So they've got ball joints at the hips here, ball joints at the knees, and ball joints at the feet. I've also seen it displayed with it rotated the other way like this, so that the feet are a little bit more, forward like that. And, either works. I think this is probably the way it's meant to be, just because in terms of the way that the joints work, it makes better sense for the animal that it turns into. But what's nice about this is it does kind of like hide this kind of like ugly armature piece in the middle a little bit more. So I don't know, to each his own. I've gone back and forth on how I want to display it myself, but truthfully, I usually just display him in robot mode anyway, but I'll leave him like that for now. He does technically have jaw articulation, but if you close the mouth any more than this, then he's got a giant fist kind of sticking out under his chin there, so really you're supposed to leave it open in this perpetual, like, Mandrill yelling kind of pose here. But yeah, he's got a nice looking Mandrill face. I really like how they've, added this kind of lighter kind of like orange paint on top of the brown to like give it a nice texture there. At first I thought that it might have just been like, orange peeking through and it had been worn out throughout the years, but no, I'm pretty sure it is a separate layer of paint on top there. But yeah, either way, looks pretty cool. In terms of comparisons, here he is just for the standard one with Kingdom Sideswipe, so you can see what they look like together. Here he is with Kingdom Rat Trap for another modern Beast Wars figure. He's a core class, he's a basic class. Basically, they're the same size class, just, changed a little bit throughout the years. The core classes tend to be a little bit smaller than basic classes, but really that's just indicative of how toys in general, or at least Transformers in general, have gotten slightly smaller throughout the years, but I think they look good together. And then here he is with Beast Wars Terragator. In my mind, these two always like faced off against each other. I think it was just because these were the first two fusers that I had as a kid. So, for a while, they were the only fusers that I had until I got more as I, got older. So I always kind of envisioned them as enemies. I don't know exactly why. I don't know if there's any fiction behind that, but I think they look kind of fun together. In terms of transformation, first thing you want to do with the legs here is just untab this little armature section from the top here and kind of double hinge it down like that onto itself, and do that on both sides. And then those two halves will peg together, and then you just straighten out the legs here, and depending how you had it transform with the legs, either rotate them at the knees or rotate them at the feet so that it's facing forward here. And then this whole kind of bottom section here is on a swivel that's kind of like at the corner of the body here, so it's kind of offset, so it sits like that in beast mode, but then you rotate it this way so it realigns itself with the body there for robot mode. Then you want to take the little arm here and fold it out from the Mandrill head, and then fold this whole section down to be one of his arms. And then for the other arm, you want to take the tail here, fold it up like that, and then this whole chunk kind of just ends up hanging off his hand in robot mode. So to compress it a little bit, I usually take the Mandrill legs and just kind of fold them down like this, just to have it be more of like a solid unit, I guess. And then you unfold that whole section and then bring it down like that. And then last but not least, there's a little slider on the back here. So you just push this section up and that will reveal his head. And there you have Bantor in his robot mode. And yeah, I think he looks pretty cool. I like his whole sort of like cat-like tiger aesthetic with the head sculpt like that. It makes for a neat little figure. What's also kind of fun about this figure, a little fun fact, is if you're familiar with Transformers Prime, the television series, there's actually a reference to Bantor in one of the episodes. I'm pretty sure it's the episode where Ratchet is trying to give Bumblebee his transformation cog, so he's like under for surgery, and then when he's waking up, he's all like groggy and spouting like a bunch of random nonsense, and he says it's just kind of like a throwaway line to make him, you know, as like a joke to make it sound all like crazy, I guess. But he says something like, Bantor, he was all Mandrill until I put a tiger in his tank. So it's kind of referencing the Fuzor alt mode there. I think he actually says Fuzor too. And then one of the other characters are like, what's a Fuzor? It's just kind of a fun little reference if you're familiar with the toy line, but otherwise just kind of a throwaway line. But yeah, in terms of articulation, the head here is just on a swivel. It sometimes kind of compresses a little bit. It does click into place, the little you know, slider here, so it mostly stays open, but just ever so slightly the chin kind of dips into the body, which is not too big a deal, but yeah, no, just normal head swivel otherwise. For this arm, it's on a swivel here at the shoulder, and then it can also hinge up and down like that for transformation. And then unfortunately, the only elbow really on this arm is it's got that kind of gorilla arm thing where it's folded in like that, just like on the mouth of the Mandrill. It doesn't fold this way at all, unfortunately, but whatever. For this arm, the shoulder is on a ball joint here, so it can rotate all the way around like that, and then just a hinge for the elbow, no bicep swivel or anything like that. For the waist, technically he does have a waist joint, but like I said earlier, it's that kind of like offset, like it's really at the corner of the body here, so it looks disjointed from the body pretty quickly. You can probably get like a little bit of bend out of it, and I think like that looks fine, but if you rotate a little bit further, it's not very you know, good looking. His hips are on ball joints, so they can go forward, backward, out to the side. This sometimes comes on pegs, but unpegged, but it mostly stays together okay. He's got a thigh swivel just because the knee is a ball joint, and then a little under 90 degrees of bend at the knee there, and then the feet are on ball joints, so they get a good amount of tilt, and then obviously rotation. So yeah, in terms of gimmicks in this mode, first of all, he's got his maximal spark crystal. It's kind of hot here today, so you can see it bright and clear right there in his shoulder there, the little rub sign. For this arm, he's got a little like a little button here that that hinges forward like this. It's kind of like a power punch kind of attack there. It doesn't really look good when extended, but I guess like if you wanted to just give him like a Mandrill arm, you could, you know, fold this away and just have this be his hand. Although if you want the, you know, the jaw to actually be a hand, then you'd be able to see the other part of the robot mode hand. So I don't know. It's kind of a fun gimmick, but I don't think it looks particularly good. And overall, I think it's probably to the figure's detriment since it, you know, kind of takes away a little bit of articulation in this arm, but not the end of the world. In terms of other weaponry, oh, and I should also say, you can kind of do it in the Mandrill mode. I guess I could have shown that off, but I mean, it doesn't look good, and you can't even like really reach the button because it's kind of flush with the rest of the body there. So, you know, doesn't work so well. But for this arm here, he does have kind of like a lot of this ugly sort of junk just hanging off the side here. You can take it off. It's just pegged into the arm here. You just kind of have to. It's a pretty tight connection and can get kind of stuck on there sometimes. But once you get it off, he does look better without it on there. I mean, he's got kind of like just a big hole in his forearm, but otherwise, I think he looks better. But unfortunately, there's nowhere else to really store this. I kind of wish that there was a way to like, you know, like a peg on here or something so you could attach it to his back. Like there could have literally just been a peg on the back of this Mandrill leg and then use the peg that the armature plugs into in alt mode. And like, he'd still have a bunch of clutter, but at least it would kind of be in a compressed backpack rather than hanging off of his forearm. it just wasn't really a design intention, so I get why they didn't do that, but kind of unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, he looks better without it, but like, then you've got like a quarter of the alt mode just kind of off to the side somewhere, which I'm not a huge fan of, but is an option. What I've also noticed that you can do is if you actually, it's supposed to be plugged on this way, but if you plug it on like this, the opposite way, what you can kind of do is fold the tail back up and give him a little like sword arm, which I think looks kind of cool as a weapon option. Even the way that the tail is sculpted, it has a little bit of like a serrated edge there on the inside. So I think that's kind of cool and is a way to make the best of a kind of bad situation with this whole big, you know, back chunk just hanging off of his arm. So it's nice that that's an option. I mean, you could also store it like that this way too. I guess that looks maybe a little bit cleaner since at least, you know, the thinner section is by his hand, but I usually just leave it as it's originally attached on there just so I don't have to take it on and off. And, you know, it's not the worst case of Beast Wars, like, you know, extra kibble going on, but it is kind of an eyesore. In terms of comparisons, here he is again with Sideswipe, just for that standard one, obviously much smaller, being a basic class versus a deluxe class figure. Here he is again with Rat Trap, who, you know, they're pretty much the same size. Core class figures, like I said, are a little bit smaller than basic class figures just because toys or Transformers in general have gotten a little bit smaller throughout the years, but they stack up pretty nicely. And then here he is again with Terragator, who, yeah, I mean, here's an example. His extra kibble that he just has to hold on to with his hands is way worse than that. So, you know, I think he turns out okay because of it in comparison. But either way, it's I like the two of them together. I think they make for a neat little pairing. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. Not a whole lot else to say about this figure. I love his little like tiger aesthetic in his face here. Maybe he could have used a bit more paint, but that's okay. Still gets the point across. I like the sculpted, yeah, you know, jaws in there with the angry teeth. That's cool. The gimmick is, it's kind of lame, but it's not too obtrusive, all things considered. Because, like, really, you know, if they wanted to give him an elbow joint, they would have had to completely redesign how this whole system works. So I don't know if the gimmick is really to blame for that. I wish that, you know, this chunk could store somewhere or fold up more elegantly, but you know, that's okay. Otherwise, he's a really cool little figure, and I like him a lot. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Without further ado, here we have Transformers Beast Wars Basic Class Bantor.